Hello and welcome back to the MMA India show. This is your host Parvin Dabas, and with us is Akhilesh Ganavarrapu, and we will get straight to the heart of the matter at UFC 211. We'll follow the fighters, the same fights which we did in the UFC 211 preview show, और हम शुरुआत करेंगे एडी एल्वारेज और डस्टिन पोरियर के साथ. इसमें एक कंट्रोवर्सी हुई थी, ऑफ कोर्स जो फाइट एंड हुई है. कंट्रोवर्सी मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ बिकॉज जो यूनिफाइड रूल्स हैं वो एक्चुअली यूनिफाइड रूल्स नहीं हैं. अखिलेश, कैन यू टेल अस what was the rule before and what is the rule now about being a grounded fighter, and the fact that it's not been accepted, I guess, across all states yet?
So the way of implementation is, for example, they give a specific date during which the new rules come into existence, the new practices come into existence. So until now, if you have to be a grounded fighter, what you have to do is, even if you have one finger on the ground, then you're deemed a grounded fighter. Anything other than your feet touching the ground, it's a grounded fighter. So even if you have a finger on the mat and someone kicks you in the head, so not kicks, but knees you in the head,
that's illegal.
Yeah, knees you in the head, that's illegal. But with the new rules, what it states is a fighter needs to have both his hands on the ground to be deemed a grounded fighter. So there are new practices that will be added to the existing.
And that's the rule which was there when Chris Weidman fought Gegard Mousasi. The new rule had taken effect in New York, correct? That was New York, right? Buffalo. That was Buffalo.
Had not taken effect. So what happened during the Mousasi fight was Mousasi lifted Weidman off the mat and connected with a knee. So he was not grounded at that point as well. And now, Dustin Poirier clearly had his hand on the mat when Eddie Alvarez, at least the second time, you could see Poirier having his hand on the mat when Eddie Alvarez kneed him in the head. But the third time, both his hands were on the mat when he kneed him.
Yeah, but to Eddie's defense, if you see the replay, Eddie's whole head, of course, it's his job to make sure whether the guy is grounded or not and to have to look. But to his defense, it's not that easy when you're fighting, and his whole head was on the other side of Dustin Poirier's body, so he wasn't really able to see whether Dustin Poirier's hands were grounded, though if Dustin Poirier is bent over, that's what he should be looking for.
Right. So when you're fighting, what happens is either when you have the underhooks or the overhooks, what happens is your hands and your shoulders kind of obstruct your view of what is happening beneath, whether when it comes to the mat or whatever is happening with the opponent's hands or anything like that. So once you have those underhooks or overhooks, when your shoulders come in between, it obstructs your view. So it's not always that crystal clear. When you have someone that knees someone in the head, it's not always intentional. It's accidental most of the times. So the same thing happened with Eddie Alvarez. But what happened was you have Herb Dean clearly watching the foul, the second knee to the head, which was illegal. Herb Dean clearly saw that happen.
Yeah.
But I think what happened was when Eddie connected with the knee, Poirier's hand, got off the mat. So I think at that point, Herb Dean did not think that Poirier was grounded. But the third time, when both of his hands were grounded, and then Eddie Alvarez again probably accidentally kneed him, then Herb Dean stopped the fight.
But even the second one was illegal, but there was confusion because referees are used to, they're having to go between two rules, even the players, right?
So no, until now, for example, even now the new rules haven't come into the picture yet.
Yeah.
So it's the same old rules. But as I said, what happened, I think, was the Mousasi-Weidman fight kind of played.
But haven't the rules have come into effect in certain states where they have been accepted by those athletic commissions?
They, from what I remember, they come into effect either from the end of June or July beginning.
Are you sure? Because I do remember the commentators talking about the new rules being different across some athletic commission states and having been accepted some places and not having come into effect in some places.
Yeah, it's the same thing as, see, for example, if you have the weight cutting policies, certain states have certain regulations and policies that come into effect much before than the other states do. So yes, when you talk about certain athletic commissions, I don't know which, to be very frank, to be exact, But there might be a scenario where a couple of states might have already accepted the new regulations. So that might have happened. But, again, in your main states, your Nevada, your New York, and even Dallas, where this happened, the new rules haven't come into practice yet. But what I think happened during that, the end was, we saw during the Musasi-Weidman fight that Musasi lifted Weidman and then connected with a knee. But the referee kind of failed to capture that. So I think Herb Dean gave Eddie that benefit of the doubt, because when you see the second knee, you see Poirier's hand going up. So there might be a chance that Herb Dean thought,
But they were going up with the force of Eddie's knee.
Right, so it's a momentum.
Yeah.
It's 1 second thing. So the same thing happened with Musasi when Weidman thought that he got kneed in the head while his hands were down. The referee thought the same.
Yeah.
So Herb Dean might have given Eddie Alvarez that benefit of the doubt, but the third knee was clearly illegal, so he had to stop the fight.
Yeah, and from what I remember, he spoke with officials outside the octagon, where he said he didn't think it was intentional, and therefore he would say NC rather than give the win to Dustin.
Right. Now the thing is, if Herb Dean would have thought the second knee was illegal, then it would have been a disqualification straight out. Because once you have connected with an illegal knee, you cannot do it again. And Eddie Alvarez did that twice. So you can see it from both ends. You can see it from Herb Dean's perspective, where he kind of gave Eddie Alvarez the benefit of the doubt. You can also see it from Dustin Poirier's perspective, when he got tagged with 2 illegal knees.
Now, before that, the fight seemed to really be going in the direction of being a real out brawl, because Dustin had Eddie shaken a couple of times, and Eddie got a couple of counters in there as well, where he shook up Dustin. So it really seemed like, it seemed like Eddie might go down, but he didn't. He really kept it together, and he was, kind of getting his head together and giving it back. So it really did seem like it was going to be a back and forth kind of exciting fight until this happened.
Right. So I was very impressed with Poirier's boxing. So, you could see Poirier was keeping his distance, trying to control the range with those leg kicks. He was very crisp, while Eddie Alvarez, on the other hand, was very tentative, was very heavy on his lead leg. He was not moving the way he should have. I think the loss to Conor McGregor was still playing in Eddie Alvarez's head, because he was not as smooth, as dynamic, or as fluid as Dustin Poirier was. Poirier was outlanding him. Poirier in the first round, you could see, was outstriking him. He was much more fluid than Eddie Alvarez was. The second round, you could see Eddie's durability coming into play, because he got, as you said, tagged by Poirier in the second round, but Eddie persevered. Then he landed a couple of counters on his own, which rocked Poirier as well. So it was, the first round clearly went to Poirier. The second was going back and forth until, the illegal knees happened. But yeah, I kind of think Eddie Alvarez still has the loss to Conor McGregor in his mind, because he clearly wasn't fluid in his movements. He was very, very heavy on his lead leg. He was very tentative. Once you saw that Poirier was faking, feinting and faking, you could see Eddie Alvarez's hands dropping, because he was too scared of, of the repeat of what happened with Conor McGregor. So he was very tentative. He was very, gun shy. He was not going for his usual jabs, playing behind his jabs like Dustin Poirier did. So I think I was very impressed with Poirier's striking. He looked much more fluid. He looked much more confident while moving forward, while Eddie Alvarez didn't. He kind of had that hangover of the loss to Conor McGregor. But yeah, as you said, if it went to 3 rounds, I think Poirier might have even edged out Eddie Alvarez.
Well, now moving on to the next fight, Frankie Edgar versus Yair Rodriguez. I have to say that you were right, and अगर हिंदी में बोले तो फ्रैंकी एडगर ने यार रोड्रिगेज का कीमा बना दिया. He literally made mincemeat of Yair Rodriguez to an extent that I certainly didn't think. We all know Frankie Edgar is, very strong, and Yair had this, upcoming kid like you were talking about. But he just attacked from the word go. He didn't give Yair any space, to create the stuff that he usually creates. All those different angles and kicks. He just didn't give him any space. He just crowded him, I think is the best word. कि आते ही अंदर घुस गया और उसकी he didn't give him any space at all, and when he took it to the ground, Yair did a decent job of defending, but not good enough against a guy of Frankie Edgar's caliber, and he really did rough him up really badly, where finally, at the end of the second round, like we all know, it had to be stopped because of Yair's eye.
Right. So, as I said, Frankie Edgar is so dominant as a wrestler on the ground that it's difficult for someone like Yair Rodriguez, who's still young, who's still green, to kind of negate Frankie's advantage when the fight hits the ground. When we saw against someone like Cub Swanson how ruthless and how swarming Frankie Edgar really can be as a wrestler. He's very heavy on the ground for someone his size. But the same thing that Yair did with BJ Penn, he should have done with Frankie Edgar, because Frankie doesn't have the reach that Yair Rodriguez has.
Yeah, but Frankie didn't give him the chance to do that.
Right, so this all depends upon the range control.
I would put Cub and Yair in the same, new age, new school of MMA, different angles, kicks, and everything. But like we saw, Frankie Edgar had the answer to both of them, where he would not give them the space or breathing space at all to create those moves. He would just absolutely get in and attack, and I don't think these guys are that good in the pocket like Frankie is.
Right. The example that I can relate this to was the second fight between Stephen Thompson and Tyron Woodley. You look at the styles of Stephen Thompson and Yair Rodriguez, both are very unorthodox. Both are very kick-heavy styles. For someone like Yair Rodriguez, again, if experience was on his side, then, he could have managed to keep the distance against someone like Frankie Edgar. But as I said, the youth, the inexperience, the fact that Yair Rodriguez hasn't faced anyone as experienced.
Yeah, but let's not take that away from Frankie Edgar, where he didn't give this guy. I think Yair knew what Frankie was going to do, but Frankie was just too good at executing it. Where the way he rushed him, it would have been really hard for anybody to just keep running away.
Right. So again, if we see the fighters from Jackson Wing, for example, they excel at keeping distance. They excel at the range control because of their oblique kicks, the way they target someone, especially a wrestler's lead leg, right? So again, with a little bit of experience, with a little bit of street smart, I think Yair Rodriguez could have made a match out of it. But as I said during the preview itself, I did not see Frankie Edgar going past the second round against Yair Rodriguez. I really thought, Frankie would stop him. And again, once, as you said, he closed the distance, it was all Frankie. The thing that I wanted to see was Yair still has very good offensive guard, right? But I really wanted to see how good his defensive guard was against someone like Frankie Edgar. And you could see a lot of holes once the fight hit the floor. Off his back, Yair Rodriguez did not have many answers to the pressure that Frankie Edgar exerted on Yair. So
we have a small technical problem, and we're back. Okay, you were talking about his defensive guard and it having holes once.
Yes, so in this fight you kind of saw the big gap that needs to be filled by someone that is youthful, someone that is exuberant, someone that takes risks like Yair Rodriguez, or we can take the example of Alex Caceres, whoever the guys are that are still coming up, but are very talented but inexperienced. So again, someone like Frankie Edgar, who has been there for nearly 2 decades, Yair Rodriguez had the proper style to kind of cause an upset, but did not have the experience.
Yeah, well, that was that, and he stopped him. So, like you said, now coming to Demian Maia and Jorge Masvidal. Now, this was a fight, and according to me, Demian Maia not being able to submit Jorge Masvidal should have cost him the fight. According to me, Jorge, he wasn't really ever able to put Jorge was able to control the wrists and everything. I think he did a really good job of defending against somebody like Damian. And Damian Maia said that at the end of the fight, that he was the best, Jorge was the best, I think he said jiu-jitsu or guy on the ground that he ever fought. You know, I think that's a high praise for Jorge Masvidal. And Jorge had Damian in trouble a couple of times when they were on their feet. But was Jorge, I mean, he had Jorge tied up, but Jorge was able to get up on several occasions, if not all of them. I think once it went to the bell, but otherwise he was able to get up a lot of the times, and he defended himself pretty well. He didn't seem like he seemed pretty calm, and he knew exactly what he was doing, controlling the wrists, keeping his hands inside, making sure, he wasn't getting the choke in. So do you think it's fair to say he was robbed, or should we just
So
say
this is one of the fights where, for example, the guy on the losing end, Jorge Masvidal, would have thought, he would have wanted this fight to have happened under the new rules. Because under the new rules, the control time doesn't matter. It's at the very bottom of the list of preferences. But the amount of damage that a fighter does is high on the preference list. Under the new rules, control time still has more prominence over the amount of damage that someone does in a round. So in that regard, Jorge Masvidal would have wanted this fight to have happened under the new rules, where the amount of damage that a fighter does to the opponent would supersede or precede the importance over the control time in the cage. So if you saw even in the first round, Maia didn't do any damage. He didn't do, did not get in any submissions. He tried to go for the rear naked, but that did not happen. Masvidal controlled his wrist, as you said, and Maia again used his experience to use the cage to keep still in the dominant back position, the back mount that he had. But at the same time, he did not do any damage. It was Masvidal that did the damage in the first round as well, in the dying seconds of the first round. If you look under the new rules, that round should have gone to Jorge Masvidal and not to Damian Maia, because Damian Maia at no point during the round put Jorge in any kind of danger, either in submission or in strikes. So again, this is one of those fights where the fight on the losing end would have wanted this fight to take place under the new rules, because the amount of damage that Jorge did to Damian Maia was far greater than what Damian Maia did to Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah, that's what I was saying as well. And do you think Jorge is a victim of split decisions by now? Because all of these split decisions have been going against him. They've been going against him in a wrong kind of way, where he feels, rightly so, I would say, in a lot of times, cheated a lot of times. And in none of these fights has it seemed like he really lost.
So there is a reason why, for example, the wrestlers take the lay and pray kind of approach during these fights. Most of the times when you have either top control or the back mount, and you have the advantageous position, but you don't do much, you still get the nod on the scorecards. But under the new rules, that there's a reason why the new rules are coming in, because there is only so much that a fighter can do when he's laying on top but is doing minimal damage. So yeah, I mean, if you look at Jorge's previous split decisions as well, you kind of feel that he was hard done by with the judges' decisions. But in this case, I thought, under the existing rules, the decision was correct. It was Damian Maia that controlled 2 rounds while Jorge did, won the second round. But under the new rules, then you again kind of feel that control time doesn't mean as much as the amount of damage that a fighter does to his opponent. So it's, again, as I said, it's one of those things where if you end up on the losing end, you would have wanted this fight to have gone down under the new rules rather than the old ones.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're going to take a small break before we move on to Joanna versus Jessica Andrade. And we're back, talking now Joanna versus Jessica Andrade. Joanna, of course, defending her belt. This is the 5th time, right, that she was defending her belt, or 6th time? 5th time.
Yeah.
And she tied the record for second most defenses?
Right.
Okay. You sure? Ronda had 5 or 6?
It was 5. It was 5.
Okay, great. Now, I thought Joanna fought such a smart fight. You know, she was, even though she was backing away a lot of the, I shouldn't call it backing away, because that's not the right term. You know, because it was a strategic backwards movement rather than backing away, where she was countering all the time. And Jessica, you know, I remember in one of the embedded videos, she did a little dance and said, "When I win, I'm going to do this dance." And I said to myself, you shouldn't be doing that. You really shouldn't be doing that. This is Joanna you're fighting. And even if you did in your head think about doing this dance, you shouldn't be telling the whole world. You know, because, you know, as Joanna said in the post-fight press con, that all of these fighters talk about, you know, beating her, but when it comes to it, they don't really have a plan. Now, like we saw, I was very disappointed in Jessica's fighting strategy or plan, because there wasn't really one, except moving forward and trying to clip her, you know, and get into the pocket. Right. Whereas Joanna had, you know, seemed to have everything figured out. Right. Where she was maintaining the distance, knew that Jessica would be chasing her throughout. And, you know, it was like a perfect, her kickboxing kind of, she was using her kickboxing a lot and to great effect. And Jessica just didn't have any answer for her.
Right. So, you know, Jessica Andrade, I think she banked most on her one-punch knockout power, because we previously talked about how Jessica might be the hardest hitter in this division. At the same time, you know, ever since Joanna moved to the American top team, you could see her evolve in a striking department, because before she was a Muay Thai fighter. You know, she had a Muay Thai stance, she had more Muay Thai, you know, kind of fighting strategies or moves in her arsenal, if I can put it that way. Yeah. But ever since she moved to American top team, she has become a well-rounded striker. It's not just the aspect of Muay Thai that is so evident in her striking game anymore. It's just the all-round game that has improved so much. You know, the fact that she uses her jab so effectively and you know, works behind her jabs, because before she never used to do that. She was more into, you know, the thigh clinches, you know, making sure that she got in those knees, her short elbows and all those things. But now she has evolved so much as an all-round striker that it's scary to see the evolution of Joanna Jędrzejczyk, because before we thought she was a scary striker. Now she's just, you know, the all-round, you know, perfect striker, the perfect fighter in the division.
Yeah.
At the same time, as you said, you know, Joanna clearly had a plan. Jessica kind of banged on a power. Jessica kind of banged on the fact that she could take Joanna down.
You know, it's like Jessica was thinking to herself, "ये एक बार हाथ में आ जाए, एक मारूंगी और वो गिर जाएगी." You know, that was her plan. She was just like excited to get a chance to be in the ring with Joanna, and she thought कि इसको मुझे एक लगाना है बस, और you know, बस fight खत्म उधरी. You know, that seemed to be her plan.
Right. At the same time, you know, we saw with Claudia Gadelha what happened with Joanna Jędrzejczyk. The first 3 rounds, and we talked about it, how a wrestler usually gets the better of Joanna, except for Carla Esparza. If you talk about Claudia Gadelha, the build of Claudia and Joanna, sorry, not Joanna, Jessica Andrade, kind of are the same. You know, they are both wrestling heavy, they are both heavily muscled. So they kind of exert a lot of pressure when they take their opponents to the ground. So Jessica Andrade tried to take Joanna to the ground so many times, but Joanna's takedown defense has improved so much since a fight with Claudia Gadelha that, you know, even that is a scary aspect. You know, the quick, the evolution, the speed at which Joanna has evolved in her striking game, in her grappling, in her takedown defense. It's fantastic, you know, to see someone getting better at such a rapid pace. So, you know, Joanna had a perfect game plan. All she had to do was make sure that Jessica couldn't put too much pressure on her lead legs. You could see Joanna, you know, going to her calf, then her thighs with outside leg kicks, inside leg kicks, making sure that Jessica changed her stances constantly. She did not let Jessica, you know, kind of get into a rhythm during the fight at any point. The first round, you saw Jessica taking Joanna down with a takedown, but at the same time, Joanna got up immediately. So that kind of, you know, if you're a wrestling heavy-based fighter, the moment that your opponent, who you think does not have good takedown defense, gets up so easily after you get a takedown after much difficulty, that kind of plays in your mind. And that happened with Jessica as well. You could.
Anyway, so we're back with Akhilesh, and what were you saying over there?
Yeah, so yeah, just Joanna's game plan for the fight, the fact that she never let Jessica settle in your stances, because you saw after the second round that the amount of widths noticed on Jessica's both thigh and her and her leg. You could see that Joanna had a perfect game plan. The fact that Jessica is a pressure fighter, has to move forward to be aggressive and to put the amount of pressure that she does. If you work on a leg and make sure that she doesn't put too much weight on her lead leg, then you kind of take a lot of percentage of the amount of pressure that she could put on you. So it was so technical on Joanna's part, and the fact that every time Jessica kind of tried to push Joanna against the cage, she circled around. And once she got her back to the fence, she wasn't in a side stance anymore. She was more square, so that she had two escape routes to get out of that predicament. So Joanna was so technical, so precise in not just her striking, not just in a takedown defense, but the way in which she controlled the cage, the way in which she made sure to get back into the center of the octagon and not let herself go against the fence, and give Jessica that added advantage where she could put pressure in the clinch and probably look for a takedown. So it was, again, such a technical performance on Joanna's part. So that was, I think, the most impressive showing of Joanna till date. Because the last time, you saw someone like Claudia Gadelha try to use the same tactic against Joanna for 3 rounds, Claudia was able to do that. But Jessica couldn't do that even for 1 round.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a great fight. Now moving on to the main event, Stipe versus Junior Dos Santos. And now, of course, this was the second time they were facing each other after 2014, in which was that unanimous or split?
I think it was a
Dos
unanimous
Santos won. Okay, but either ways, it was considered one of the best heavyweight fights, and it kept going back and forth, and it was really an amazing fight. Now this one, of course, we saw for some time Dos Santos had Stipe in trouble with those lead leg kicks, and we saw Stipe not being able to put full pressure on that leg, but he was really just too cool, calm, collected, and we saw Dos Santos. He knew Dos Santos would be moving backwards, because that's how he likes to fight, moving away, and he knew that, and he had a plan ready for it, and that one time he got the one really good connection was lights out for Dos Santos, so it wasn't a
right. And a lot of people thought Stipe's chin was suspect. I mean, even going to the fight, we talked about how Chigano hasn't fought as actively as Stipe has. So we also thought, that could play a big factor in the outcome of the fight, and it did. Because you saw JDS being a little too tentative, even in his movement. Yes, he tried to, keep the distance, like we saw the same thing happening with Joanna and Jessica Andrade, the same thing happened with JDS and Stipe when it came to the leg kicks. So, you have the calf kicks where you kind of try to keep your opponent away from you, especially when you're moving, against the fence. So JDS tried to do that, but Stipe was still aggressive. He still came forward, and as I said, both the boxing game is so good that it could go either ways. If JDS could get inside the pocket and tag Stipe, the fight could have easily gone the other way around. But the fact that JDS always, has trouble when his back goes against the fence, again led to his undoing. You saw JDS being very tentative, and once his back was against the fence, Stipe moved in, connected with that big overhand right, and dropped JDS. So yeah, as you said, there was nothing to the fight, but just the fact that Stipe looked so much better. In the past few fights, he has looked better than what he did, how he did a couple of fights ago before he won the heavyweight title. So you could see that Stipe was still evolving as a fighter. But JDS, I don't know what's next for him, to be very honest, at his age. But again, he's coming off a very impressive victory. He just came off an impressive victory against Ben Rothwell before this loss. So yeah, I mean, what's next for both the fighters is it's an interesting scenario that the heavyweight division finds itself in.
Yeah. I think Alistair Overeem is supposed to fight somebody now, right? Who
I think
was
yeah,
it?
it's fight.
Mark? No, that was Mark. That's Mark Hunt versus Derrick Lewis.
But
Who is Alistair Overeem supposed to fight? Verdum, yeah. Now, do you think, of course, the big upcoming heavyweight who's put a lot of excitement in this division is Francis Ngannou, who even Dana White has been backing. Do you think he's the biggest threat to Stipe?
I think both Derrick Lewis could also be a big threat to Stipe Miocic, just because Derrick Lewis, has amazing.
But he has to get.
Yeah, he has
but
to
he
get
has
through
to get
Mark
through
Hunt,
Mark Hunt first.
which I think he will. And yeah, I mean, Francis Ngannou is again a scary striker. He possesses that one-punch knockout power that you see that very often in the heavyweight division. But with that amount of scary power, you could probably associate that with someone like Mark Hunt. But that's an interesting question. I mean, I think both Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou would pose a stylistically difficult matchup for Stipe Miocic.
So, should Francis Ngannou then be fighting the
Then
winner
again, you're putting
of Derrick versus Mark Hunt?
I think that would be a better matchup because
Alistair
you're putting
versus
two
Verdum.
prospects against each other. You tend to lose one guy, and we've seen that one loss could lead to a slump for the fighters, especially the upcoming fighters. So I think rather than pitting both of them against each other, you could see probably Derrick Lewis fighting the winner of Verdum and Alistair Overeem, or Francis Ngannou doing that, maybe have a couple of fights before fighting for the title. But yeah, I think Francis especially is about two dominant wins away from fighting for the title.
Yeah, I would also say about another 2 fights.
Yeah,
would get him
again, just because
ready, and those 2
Francis
fights
also has great
exciting as
conditioning
well.
for heavyweight. I mean, you associate that with Stipe probably, and again with Cain Velasquez most probably.
Yeah.
But you don't see that kind of endurance in any other heavyweight fighter.
I think the only other heavyweight who is
But
in
Alistair
such
Overeem gasses out. He gasses out once he pushes it.
muscular and top condition is maybe an Alistair Overeem.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Right.
he conditioning wise. I'm just saying physique wise. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
over
then
3
again,
rounds.
but we haven't really seen
Yeah,
Francis
so
Ngannou
now-
tested over 3 rounds.
Right.
I think,
the next,
right?
Yeah, the next
Most
couple
of
of
his fights
fights,
have-
the next 2 fights
So we
especially, will
really
be very
haven't seen
important.
Francis's conditioning yet, being tested rather. We will win for him. Yeah. Well, having said that, we had a great, exciting UFC 2-on-1. There were a lot of good fights on the prelims as well, which we didn't speak about. But that was it for today. And congratulations to all the winners of the UFC 2-on-1 contest. You will be getting your USI Universal gear. And we would also like to thank Crunch today for coming on as a magazine partner. Welcome to them. So keep following us on all our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and visit our website, MMAindia.com, for all the latest news on the MMA world and also to see this episode. Thank you and keep joining in.